the more Sean and I chose to live our lives divinely guided, the more we've been open to alternative ways of living or alternative ways of just doing life, And again, when, my entire work on this planet is deconstructing programming and conditioning. And, it's important, I think, to also look at what are we programmed and conditioned to believe that marriage should be, or, all of these things that we think we have to do to fit inside the box of what it means to be a good wife or a good husband or a good partner.
This is Leah Steele. Welcome to the Wealth Witch podcast. Just a few years ago, I experienced complete financial collapse. We lost a business, our home, and a car. My husband was selling plasma to pay for diapers and formula. I was living a life I hated, and I was miserable. It was the lowest part of my life. It ended up being my biggest blessing. Just a few short years later, I've designed the life of my dreams. I live a life of luxury in beautiful Bali, Indonesia, travel the world, and spend my days helping others manifest wealth and abundance. Living a purpose-led life changed everything for me. This podcast is about my journey, my top tips and tools for manifestation, and interviews with all the amazing, world-changing, inspiring people I meet along the way. Welcome to my world.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Wealth Witch podcast. I am your host, but actually not today, Leah Steele, the Wealth Witch. Today we're doing a very special episode of the Wealth Witch podcast, and the tables are actually being turned on me, and I am going to be interviewed by my friend, one of my wealth alchemy apprentices, one of my emotional resonance clearing practitioners in training, almost practitioner, Kari Yasi. So Kari, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Happy to have you here. I'm super excited for this episode. I have no idea what questions she's going to be asking me. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. So you are now officially the host of the Wealth Witch podcast.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. So I just want to welcome everyone to the Wealth Witch podcast. I am your host, Kari Yasi. I am an intuitive strategist, mindset advisor, and have the honor of being a wealth alchemy apprentice, almost done, and emotional resonance clearing practitioner in training. So this is really, really fun and special to me because quite a few years ago, I had been given an opportunity to host some interviews and things like that for a friend of mine, Ryan Lee. And then I stopped and I kind of fell off of it. And when I was pregnant with my third child, right, I was like, oh my gosh, Ouroboros, Leah Steele, where have you been all my life? Like, let's just completely change everything around my money, wealth, worthiness, deservingness, a million other things, right? And really started to tap back in and do the work around the limiting beliefs. And, I was going through a really tough time and I was really tight on money. And as I was working through this and I was deconstructing all of the patterning and programming conditioning that I had, opportunities started to come my way. Things started to shift and change. It was very magical. And one of the things that was so exciting was I had the dream hosting gig literally fall into my lap, right? Like it was all about wealth consciousness and I got to host 2 seasons of the show. And so I just think it's so great that I get to do what I love. And I feel like I get to do it now because, I went through Ouroboros with Leah and those opportunities came and now I get to interview you. So very, very excited. And I know you mentioned you're not really sure how you feel because you don't really know what's being asked of you. I'm curious, what is the biggest concern you have about that?
Well, I don't know that I'm concerned about it. I think more excited, but yeah, I just, I think that we didn't really have a conversation about what these questions were going to be. I know that you are going to be asking some personal stuff. I think that the idea behind this was for people to be able to get to know me personally a little bit more. So I'm interested to see what you came up with. I mean, obviously on the Wealth Witch podcast, typically I tell a little bit of my story, but it's always as it pertains to my journey within, the wealth consciousness paradigm. So yeah, I'm not worried, not concerned, just more
curious.
curious. Yeah.
I will be very honest. I'm an intuitive interviewer, right? So I also am not necessarily sure where this is going. And I'm also very interested to see what comes out to play today, because I just feel like there might be some things. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive in if you're ready, and just start by, saying, yes, this is an opportunity for people to really get to know you, because I think there's a lot of perceptions around wealth and abundance and money coaches and spiritual teachers, whatever you want to call them. And people forget that it's a journey. And even though you talk a lot about the journey, I don't know that people have really had the opportunity until now to fully see you. So I actually kind of want to go back to the beginning. I'm really curious if you could describe how you were as a little girl and your personality. How would you describe yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a little girl, I was an entertainer. I always wanted to be on the stage. I was a dancer. I was continually performing shows for my mom and anybody else that would watch or would listen. And growing up, I wanted to be an actress and a singer. And I loved entertaining people. I loved shining, basically. And when it came to school and education, I was frequently in trouble because I would get all of my work done really, really quickly. And then I would distract all the other students because I would be talking to them or trying to entertain them, right? And so I think I started experiencing that you're too much programming and conditioning and indoctrination, not from my mother at home, but in the school system. And so, I think that it was quite, that was sort of the beginning of me dimming my light and not shining as brightly as, I was meant to here on this planet. So I also was highly, highly intuitive, had a lot of spiritual gifts as a young child, as a little girl. I always just had my clear cognizance, my clear knowing that was always a part of me. My mom always tells a story that when I was about 2 years old, and I talked and walked very early. I was walking at 8 months old.
Wow.
And I was speaking in sentences at 12 months old. My mom was a speech pathologist, so she obviously worked a ton with me on language, and so I talked really early. But she always tells these stories about, me being 2 years old and us being out. And obviously, this was in 1978, so there were no cell phones and there was no caller ID. And she tells these stories about we would be out and we'd be shopping, or we'd be grocery shopping, or we'd be running errands, and I would say, "Grandma's calling." And she would say, "You mean you want to call Grandma when we get home?" And I would say, "No, Grandma's calling." And so then we would get back home, and, my grandma would call back in a few hours, and she'd say, "Oh yeah, I called you today about 1:30, which was when I had been saying Grandma's calling. So that knowing part of me has always been there. I've always had it. I have the nickname, the Oracle, in my close circle of friends because of that. Yep. So I guess that's a little bit about who I was as a child.
I love that. So you did dance and you wanted to be an actress. What happened with that?
I think that was a huge, huge part of my life up until high school, really. And when I went to high school, I think became more interested in being popular in boys than I was in theater or singing. And I had struggled quite a bit growing up with friends up until the point that I was in high school because I was different. I lived in Salt Lake City, Utah. Salt Lake City, Utah, for those of you that are global listeners and aren't familiar with that area of the United States, it is a city that is primarily Mormon or LDS, the Church of Latter-day Saints. And it's a lot of blonde-haired, blue-eyed highly religious people that live in Salt Lake City, Utah. That is much changed now. But when I was growing up, and where I was growing up in Salt Lake City, the location within the city that I was growing up, I was the only dark-skinned girl. I looked completely different than anybody else, and I wasn't of the dominant religion. And so I felt alone a lot. And it's probably one of the reasons why I was so into theater and so into all of that stuff growing up, because that was the only place where like it was acceptable to be different. But that wasn't part of my school or education environment. That was stuff I did after school or during the summer. And so I just didn't have a lot of friends. I would spend my recesses reading. I loved reading. I was an avid reader. I've always wanted to know all the things about all the things. So, you know, but it was a struggle. And I was teased a lot. And so when I got to high school, all of a sudden being different was
the thing.
Really great. The guys especially really wanted to date somebody that didn't look like everybody else, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I got connected with a popular group of kids in my high school, and the acting and the singing, it sort of fell away a little bit. But I think at that time also, I sort of began rebelling against my perception of who my mother was, which was this kind of free-loving, hippie, Democrat woman. And I decided, you know, at that time that I wanted to be a businesswoman, and, you know, I didn't want to be spiritual. I wanted, you know, I really was embracing like the world of materialism. So that's sort of what happened. And there was a time in my life when I went back and revisited my singing career for a few years in my early 20s, my mid 20s, I guess, right before I had my middle son. But yeah. So.
Okay. Cool. And what was your genre of choice for singing?
Well, when I was young, I was classically trained in opera, and the majority of what I was doing was musical theater stuff. So there wasn't, you know, in my youth, there wasn't a genre. And then as I revisited singing in my mid-20s, I originally kind of went in singing R&B and pop, but that quickly morphed into country music. So right before I got pregnant with my son, Josiah, I had signed with an incredible manager, was getting ready to move to Nashville to record an album. And and then
like, do you ever think about what it would feel like to be like a country music singer? Like, do you think about that and be like, like, cause when I think about it, right, I'm like, I could see you looking cute with like a little cowboy hat on or something, but like, I just don't know if I can get there, right? So did you have it all visualized?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I was in that world. I was in that, you know, I was in that lifestyle. And, you know, I think the thing that's interesting about the music industry, it's not the way that we really perceive it to be. So country music, I love country music, and I always loved country music, but country music was a decision that was made based upon my voice, the type of voice I had, and that there were not any biracial women in country music at that time. And there were 100,000 probably biracial women trying to be pop and R&B singers. And so, you know, and I worked in the music industry, on the business side of the music industry for years. So I really, truly get and understand the strategy in the business as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think about it a lot, because obviously I'm living a very different life now. And that was a choice that I made, and I never looked back, and I actually never regretted the choice that I made. And so I don't think about it a lot, but, you know, like anything else, I think we live multiple lives in this lifetime that we have on this planet. And so it really seems like almost a different timeline for sure. But it almost seems like a different lifetime.
That's what I would say. So you said in high school, right? That's when you kind of went from music and, you know, and changing, you know, your experience of your interactions with your mom and getting more business because she's just a little bit more woo woo. Do you feel like at any point you minimized your gifts while kind of focusing more on business? Or do you feel like you always had the same level of connection, but just were disassociating with maybe like the human experience of other people, spirituality?
No, I very consciously shut down my spiritual gifts around the time that I was 8 or 9 years old. And maybe, probably somewhere between 7 and 9 years old, because it was becoming too much. And I recall a few situations where I, made that decision that like, I didn't want that anymore. Now, I think that making that conscious decision and shutting off your gifts are two different things, right? And so my claircognizance never went away. My clear knowing never went away.
Yep.
I started talking about it differently. So, when I started in business, I had a lot of success really quickly in many different industries. Part of that has to do with my human design, and part of that has to do with my spiritual gifts. And so, but I would talk a lot about, I just have good instincts. That's what I would always say. I just have good instincts. But it wasn't that I had good instincts. I have this gift. And so that never went away. That's always been a part of me. But as far as being able to see spirit, speak with spirit, all of that, like that went away for a very long time.
And when did that come back? When did you call on that again?
Well, I began my spiritual reawakening about 34 or 35. And it was a several year long process of really stepping back into it. But it was during that time. So 10 years ago, essentially.
Yep. Awesome. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I think that anybody who knows you for any period of time knows your intense distaste for patchouli. Like, is that
this
from
is a
like
patchouli free zone?
Like patchouli free zone, right? So first of all, I'm super curious what your favorite smell is. And I want to know if there was anything that happened, like, was your first horrible kiss in a room that smelled like patchouli? Like, what is the aversion? Like, does it attach a memory to it? Like, it's intense. I mean, it's not.
So I honestly have no idea. Like, if something happened traumatic, maybe I blocked it out, but I cannot handle it. Like, it is just a smell that I cannot handle. And I have a funny story, actually, because yesterday, my husband and I went, it was a really good friend of ours' birthday, and we went and had a weekend celebration for our friend's birthday. And as many people know, Sean and I sleep in separate beds. We sleep in separate rooms. And so we were sharing a bed, and he has started growing his beard out, and he's been using a friend's, shout out to Unstoppable Beard and Brian Swan. He's been using Brian Swan's beard line. And I was laying next to him, and I was like, that beard line has patchouli in it. I could smell the patchouli. It was making me so sick. And when Sean woke up, I was like, I have bad news. Like, you can't use Brian's beard line anymore because it has patchouli in it. And Sean's like, I didn't use it though today. And I'm like, well, you smell like patchouli. And he's like, what was it in? And so like, we were literally like sitting there, like racking our brains. And then he realized it was in a facial moisturizer that he got. And at first smell, you can't smell it because it has all these other scents. But after it settled into his skin, I could smell the patchouli. And I was like, throw that out and never put it on your body again.
Oh my gosh.
And it is so strong, the repulsion. Yeah. Like, I can't handle it. So yes, I have extreme distaste. I literally am always like, it is a patchouli free zone. Do not bring it around me. Like, I can't handle it. It makes my stomach churn. It makes me like physically ill.
I mean, it feels like it's not like a very traumatic experience, right? Like, doesn't it just feel like it is like, it's like when you're super pregnant and you like eat something and you throw it up and you can like never eat it again, right? It's like, you just have like a real Strong.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know where it comes from, but it's real. I will tell you that. And my favorite smell, oh my gosh, what is my favorite smell? Well, I love the smell of jasmine.
Yep.
And I also love the smell of frangipani, which is a tree here in Bali that has these beautiful flowers. Like if you ever see my stories and I have the flower behind my ear, that is that flower. And the trees are here all over. And something really interesting about frangipani is Bali is the only island in Indonesia, which I think is made up of, it's over 18,000 islands, the country of Indonesia. Bali is the only island where they plant frangipani trees near houses because they're spirit trees. So they are trees that call spirits. And so they're all over the island, but in most places they won't plant them near the house because they don't want to call the spirits near the houses. But in Bali, they're always everywhere and they're always near the houses, and we have tons of them on the property. So little fun fact, little Bali fun fact there for you.
That is a fun fact. So this is something, and I know you talk about it, but I think you have a lot of new listeners who haven't. And so you and Sean actually have known each other for 25 years, right? Or longer.
Yeah. Well, we've known each other longer. We've known each other, I mean, I guess technically the first time we met was about 29 years ago. He was dating one of my best friend's sister when I was in high school. Sean's 8 years older than me. And so he was dating my best friend's sister. And so I met him probably 30 years ago. The anniversary of our first date same kiss and date was last Thursday. So yeah, we've been, and then we dated several times over the years, never had a bad breakup. We're just great, great friends, and ended up getting back together about 12 years ago. And we've been married for just over 10 years.
Yeah, you just had your 10-year wedding anniversary. So congratulations, first and foremost. That's very exciting.
Thank you.
I think it's important to clarify because, you talk about how you and Sean don't sleep in the same bedroom, and you get this all the time, right? People are like, oh my God, your marriage must be horrible, or something must be wrong, or you guys must not even like each other. Like you just want to, right? Like, I mean, you've had to have heard that. So would you mind clearing for all the people? Like, what, are you happily married? Like,
yes, I'm very happily married. So Sean and I are both projectors in human design. And I think that's kind of the first thing to say. I think truly that projectors should sleep by themselves. It makes life a lot happier. But Sean and I have completely opposite sleeping patterns. So it's a little, I can fall asleep quite quickly, but I'm a very, very light sleeper. And I cannot sleep with light on or the television on or any noise. Like I need it to be completely silent. Sean has a hard time falling asleep, wakes up in the middle of the night and has to turn the television back on to go back to sleep. He can't fall asleep without the television on. And so the beginning of our marriage was always me. And I stay up a little later than he does. So that was kind of okay in the beginning. And he's an early riser and I sleep in later. But it was just, I wasn't sleeping essentially for like the first few years of our marriage. I was not sleeping well because I would have to wait for him to fall asleep before I could turn everything off and then wind myself down and fall asleep. And then at 3 a.m, he would wake up and then he would get up and go out to the couch, which would wake me up. And then I would have a hard time falling back to sleep after he had left. And it literally like was not conducive to a happy marriage or a happy life. And so, then after Jack was born, there was this thing where like he would always, for a long time, we stayed falling asleep together and then he would move to the other bedroom in the middle of the night. And then after Jack was born, we just started sleeping, just having different rooms. And it worked so amazingly. And like, we were both so much happier. We were both so much more well rested. There was no like walking on eggshells, like, oh, I don't want to wake them up, or, oh, I don't want to disturb them. It's just the ability to sort of have your space, be able to sleep, be well rested. So
which then makes you more present, and it makes you happier, right? Which then makes you a better partner.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. People think it's weird. And in fact, here in Bali, like when we first move in to whatever villa we're staying in, the staff is kind of like, what's going on there? But the way we have it set up here, for example, in this villa that I think is really cool is we're on the top floor of the main house, and it's just our bedrooms up there. And so you walk in a door and there's like a sitting room, and then Sean's room is on the right and mine's on the left, but we share a balcony. So it's basically a big suite that just has walls in between it. And then we have 2 beds and we have our own bathrooms, which also is amazing. And if you don't have your own bathroom, I would recommend having your own bathroom, even if you don't have your own bedroom, because it's amazing to just like have your own space.
I agree. Well, and I think that it's really important, right? Because those are the type of untraditional conscious choices that you're willing to make because you listen to yourself and you trust yourself, and you talk to your partner and you listen and you trust them, and together, like whether you had a full-blown conversation or not, you're moving in a direction that works for you, not what everyone else says has to happen in order for it to be a happy or a good marriage, right? I think that's really, I feel like a lot of couples would do better if they took that advice of making choices that work best for them.
Yeah. Well, you have to just decide what's in alignment for you. I mean, like anything else. And I think that, the more Sean and I chose to live our lives divinely guided, the more we've been open to alternative ways of living or alternative ways of just doing life, And again, when, my entire work on this planet is deconstructing programming and conditioning. And, it's important, I think, to also look at what are we programmed and conditioned to believe that marriage should be, or, all of these things that we think we have to do to fit inside the box of what it means to be a good wife or a good husband or a good partner. So, questioning everything is also in your relationship.
Everything. Yes. So what do you think is something really surprising about you when it comes to your relationship that people would be surprised by?
Oh, wow. Well, I don't know that, maybe people would be surprised by this. People probably are going to be like, we're not surprised by that at all, Leah. I am not the nurturer in our relationship. So my kids, you can ask my kids, like my husband, Sean, is for sure the nurturing parent. And so while that may not, I think anyone that knows, here's the thing, like the majority of the listeners don't know us personally, right? Anyone that knows us personally is like, that's not surprising at all. But I think that people see my husband that don't know him. If you just simply saw him and made a judgment based upon what he looks like, one would not think that he would be the
he kind of looks tough, right?
Yeah,
he looks
like a big, tough, bald dude,
Yeah. And he's like the sweetest man on the planet. So, So would you say that he's the more romantic one then too?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. He's the more loving one. He's the more romantic one. He's the more caring one. He's the more, yeah, definitely.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Wealth Witch podcast. I wanted to take a quick break to talk to you about an amazing offer I have to work with me like my high-end clients do for a fraction of the investment. If there's anything that the last several months of chaos and change has showed us, it's that our perceptions of what is safe, stable, and secure is anything but. You are your guarantee. You are the key to unlocking and calling in the wealth that you desire. If you don't already know, I'm all about belief and intention, and for me, deciding is the most important action you can take. So I don't need to convince you. You'll either resonate with this or not. The only prerequisite that you need to have is a desire to change your current financial reality. This mastermind I'm about to tell you about is about empowering you to take back control of your financial destiny and take action towards creating the life that you deeply desire. The Wealth Alchemy Mastermind is hosted via the Telegram app, and I've set it up in a way that it's accessible. This is an incredible opportunity to work with me in this mastermind at a special pre-launch rate of $44 a month. Yes, you heard that right. Just $44 a month to work with me at the same level that some of my high-end clients do. So what do you get? Weekly exclusive content and training, a monthly Zoom coaching call, a monthly Q&A session, wealth paradigm downloads, wealth activations, and a mastermind chat full of like-minded community. You aren't doing this mastermind for the content. You're doing it for the transmissions, period. You will be activated with abundance just by being in this container. But you have to act fast. The pre-launch offer is only available for a limited time, so click the link in the description of the podcast and sign up now. I'd love for you to join me, so do the thing. Now back to the podcast.
So let's just say you have 2 hours of free time completely by yourself. What are you doing?
Probably studying human design.
Mm-hmm.
So free time to myself. I'm either journaling, studying something about human design, or watching whatever the latest thing is on Netflix that I've decided to watch. So often for me, when I get downtime, I need to completely shut off because I'm on so much of the time. And so that's really how I do that. I've started listening to a lot of podcasts and audiobooks though recently as well. So, and honestly, if I've got time off, I typically am getting a massage or am at the spa or doing something like that because I want to really step into deep relaxation when I've actually got some time to myself.
Right? What is your favorite treatment at the spa? Like, what is the service you cannot live without?
Oh, every kind of facial, I think for sure. I'm obsessed with facials. But I also really love a good body scrub, especially here in Bali. It's really important that you get regular body scrubs and that you get regular facials because the water here is obviously there's a lot of sun here. And the water is very dirty and very hard. And so it's important to, have shower filters and things like that, but also just to make sure that you're exfoliating your skin really well, just due to the sun and the
good tip to know for all those people who are waiting to get to Bali as soon as possible, right? Yeah. When you think about your move to Bali, I mean, you guys were obviously, it's a new country, maybe you didn't know anybody or whatever, but what is the thing that surprised you the most in terms of like what you appreciated or what you enjoyed or what was something new that you were like, oh my gosh, this is my new favorite thing?
Well, for me, the beauty of Bali is the Balinese people. They are the most incredible people. They are so kind and they are so generous. And I think the thing that surprised me the most is that the energetic undercurrent of Bali is love. And people literally are just radiating the vibration and frequency of love here. And a love for the land, a love for each other, a love for humanity, and the way that they show up in their lives, and the way that they take care of each other, the way that they pray, the way that they, you can't walk anywhere in Bali without having to step over an offering. It's just a beautiful land energetically. The vibration and frequency of the land is just, and the people is incredible. So that for me has been the thing, and I don't think I recognized it when I first came here, but I didn't fully realize it until I went back to the United States and landed in the United States and was like, oh, the energy and vibration and frequency of this land is discord and separation and division and unhappiness. And so it's That I think was the most surprising and the thing that I love most.
I love it. I'm curious because again, most people who have followed you for a while, right? They know, you had a very successful business, things went sideways, you ended up with a ton of debt. That's why one of the reasons, right, that brought you to relocating, redoing everything, building up what you've built up in all the ways. At what point did you feel like financially you were like, I'm good?
Well, that's an interesting question because I don't know that I don't know that I do feel that. For me, as you know, because you work closely with me, I believe that wealth consciousness work is a never ending journey.
Mm-hmm.
And, for me, I had to make a decision because in the collapse of our business in the United States, we spent, over a year taking care of everybody else and putting ourselves last. And that resulted in a tremendous amount of debt, losing a house, losing a car, being about 3 hours away from being homeless. And when that happened, I said to myself, this will never happen again. I will never put my family last. Like my children and my little nucleus of my family will always be looked after first before anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has been what I've been journeying the last few years. And obviously in building a business, it was a shift for me because how I built business before was the business came first, the family came second. And so this time around, it hasn't been that. It's been the family comes first, the business comes second. And so it's taken quite a long time to get to the place where I actually feel safe, stable, and secure because of the tremendous loss that came from that business. We're still paying off debt from that business collapse. And it took a long time before I started paying that debt back because I needed to make sure that my family was safe, stable, and secure, right?
Yeah.
And building a brand and building a business, it requires a lot of stuff that people that are on the outside looking in don't understand, right?
Yeah.
So, and we could go into so many things about that. That's actually probably another podcast episode in and of itself. But what I really think is that it's an ongoing evolution and journey for me. And along the way this time, the other thing that was really, really important to me was that we were giving back all along the way. So we were helping the causes and the people that were important to us. And so for us now, it's very important that we give back to Bali. And so that is something that we've done the whole time that we've been here. We're actually I'm getting ready to start a women's charity here in Bali that's going to give back to female entrepreneurs. I'm really excited about that. That's kind of a new project of mine that's starting that I'm just over the moon about being able to help in that way. So I don't know that I'll ever be like, I'm good because my goals are always evolving and changing. And I think that as far as my priorities and caring for my family the way that I've wanted to care for my family, I feel like I'm in a really good place. I think once all of the debt is paid and settled from the collapse of the business, that's going to feel good. But I also know that, I'm in a tremendous place of expansion with the Leah Steele brand this year that's requiring a lot of financial investment. And so, while my goal is to have all of the debt completely paid off from the old business by the end of this year, I also know that I'll be incurring debt in the new business this year because of all of the expansion that we're doing there, right? So it's always this ebb and flow. And I talk a lot about debt and mindset. And so part of me thinks that that's when we get into trouble, when we enter into that mindset of, I've got it.
And I think that, right, there's a very big difference between being content and being complacent, right? Because when you get complacent, I feel like everything stops, right? Like you get complacent, oftentimes things stop, or you even like backslide, right? Like, oh, I get complacent. I've gone to the gym a couple times. I'm good, right? Next thing you know, you haven't gone to the gym in months. right? So I'm in agreement with you that you never want to be content or complacent rather, because I just don't think that you need to be or you deserve to be or whatever, right? There's no such thing. But tell me about for you, what is the dynamic between being content but not complacent?
Oh, geez. I don't know if I'm ever content. So I don't know if I even know how to answer that question. I feel
Yeah.
like because of who I am, I'm always moving towards it. It's always a moving target, right? For me.
Right. And so I want to talk about that though, because for you, it is a moving target. And I want to talk about it because for a lot of people, when they hear that, their experience is that they feel like it's not good enough still, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
enough, it's never enough. But coming from like that fear or that guilt or that shame place, which then just drains, depletes you, exhausts you, overwhelms you, burn out, and then you don't get where you want to go anyway. Right.
Yeah.
So can you speak into that like a little bit more for people to help them understand like the ability to have a moving target without that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's interesting because as I really started ramping up this business and really dove deeply into my wealth consciousness journey, like I remember there was a time when Sean was like, because every time I'd set a goal, before I achieved the goal, I would have changed the target, right? As I was coming up on the goal, it would become greater, it would become bigger. And I remember having a conversation with him where he was like, when is it going to be enough? Like, when is enough going to be enough? And I was like, in that moment, I had to really think about that. And I was like, it's not ever going to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's not who I am. It's not how I'm built. And I think that it was something that definitely Sean had to come to terms with. And I mean, I think there's lots of people who are partners of extremely ambitious people that would say that sometimes that's one of the hardest things to be in a relationship with somebody who's like that. But I guess that I would say for me, it's about growth and expansion. That's what I'm constantly chasing. That's what I'm after. And that doesn't come from a place of lack or scarcity or it not being enough, because it's enough. It's all enough. It's enough in every single moment. I live an incredible life where, I lived an incredible life. It was enough after we lost everything and we were living in a 2-bedroom townhouse. Like it was enough then.
Yeah.
But it wasn't what I wanted. And it wasn't what I felt I was worthy and deserving of. And it wasn't what I felt my family was worthy and deserving of. And for me, I'm just not built that way. I could never say, okay, we've achieved and reached this milestone and now that's it. And part of that, I think, has to do with the fact that I believe I've only started to scratch the surface of the good I'm here to do in the world and my ability to help the collective. And I have to be properly resourced in order to do that. And I feel like there's still so much more for me to do in that arena and in that avenue. So I don't see those targets slowing down their growth or change anytime soon.
Anytime soon. So obviously you're the wealth witch. You talk about wealth consciousness, right? We talk about breaking down the conditioning and the programming and all the things. We talk about the fact that you got into this work, with the collapse of your other business. But the truth is, when your other business collapsed, you could have done anything, right? I mean, you could have worked at Starbucks. You could have gone to school for something else. You could have just started a different brick and mortar business. Like, what made you decide to go down this path?
Well, I've been doing coaching for a long time inside my addiction treatment businesses. So, I always had a handful of clients inside that business that I was doing executive functioning coaching with because I worked in addiction treatment. And obviously the majority of people that are coming into rehabilitation treatment for addiction have been actively engaged in their addiction from the time that they were 12 or 13 years old. And so they're quite stunted in their ability to actually do the things that they need to do in the world to show up for themselves. So whether they get sober or not, it's like, okay, well, I got sober, but how do I become the person that I want to become? And I loved that. That was the part of that business actually that I really loved, was doing that. And as I started my spiritual reawakening, I first really became passionate about wanting to help women explore their spirituality in a safe space, because I was in Salt Lake City, Utah, that is a highly oppressed community, and it just wasn't safe to explore spirituality. That's kind of initially how it started. So I started hosting goddess circles, and I started hosting women's circles, and that evolved into teaching myself how to read the Akashic records, and then doing Akashic records readings for people, and ultimately teaching people how to do Akashic records readings for people. I mean, it's been such an evolution from the beginning of this thing. But when the business collapsed, I was offered other jobs in addiction treatment programs. And my soul knew that wasn't for me, and that wasn't what I needed to be doing. I needed to be helping people in a more impactful and profound way and on a larger scale.
I love that. Once again, just trusting and listening and doing, right? So you talk about meditation, and you are a very avid fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and have done, created the 90-day challenge around his meditations and all of these different things. What was your experience like the first time ever that you did a Joe Dispenza meditation?
So the first time I did a Joe Dispenza meditation, I was actually in my spiral practitioner training in Byron Bay. And we did a group, the body parts in space meditation, a group meditation. And I had a really profound experience. It was uncomfortable for me at first, but ultimately I ended up having a really, really incredible experience. And so it's interesting because I often think that had I tried to do a Joe Dispenza meditation on my own, I would have never finished the first meditation. But because I was doing it in a group of people and I couldn't not do it, I actually followed it through. And because to me, the idea of sitting in a meditation for an hour or an hour and 30 minutes was absolutely ridiculous to me. I was like, I'll meditate for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, but an hour and 20 minutes, you've got to be kidding me, right? Yeah. And I am a big Joe Dispenza meditation fan, and just a fan of his in general and his work. And it's interesting because I haven't been doing Joe Dispenza meditations as of late. And so I'm like, this is coming up for a reason.
Friendly reminder. Yep.
I need to maybe get back to it. But I mean, all along this journey since I discovered Joe Dispenza, I continually go back to his meditations. I continually go back to his work because I really, truly believe that it was the thing that really helped me begin to tap into my connection to the quantum field and my ability to create and manifest from at that level.
Absolutely. So do you feel like moving into the quantum, new, different, right away, were you like, this is a playground that more people need to play in? Or were you more like, what is this whole quantum thing, and what am I really doing here?
Well, I think right away I had an awareness and a knowing that everybody was accessing the quantum field all the time without knowing it. And so if anything, for me, I think that the realizations or the motivations that I had was I wanted people to understand how to consciously access that field more often. And so, as a result of that, obviously, because you're an apprentice in my programs, and but that it's a big foundation of the work that I do, especially when it comes to my emotional clearing work.
Absolutely. So what would you say to somebody who asked what the difference is between the Akashic records and the quantum field?
Well, at some level, it's all the same, right? At some level, all of it's the same.
Everything.
Yeah. So to me, when I'm accessing, to me, the Akashic record is the record, right? It's the entire record of each soul from its inception. So all the way forward and all the way back across the entire time and space continuum. And it's an actual record of all the thoughts, feelings, actions, deeds of a particular soul. And then it obviously houses all souls, where the quantum field to me is our infinite, it's where we access our infinite potential. Now, we access those records right? And to me, the quantum field is our potentiality. And it's where everything is available to us in that space, in the infinite now. And so if we desire something and we get really clear about something that we desire here in this 3D plane, and then we actively seek that in the quantum realm, to me, what I believe is that we simply have to get ourselves into a space of energetic alignment with that version of ourselves. And that version of ourselves already exists in the infinite now. So we simply pull that version to us. Yeah. So I guess the way I see it, if I were to just go into my actual own psychic awareness, is the Akashic records feel a lot more linear to me. And the quantum field feels a lot more like more of a sphere, I guess.
Yep.
And it's like, so everything that exists inside of there, not in a linear timeline. And the Akashic records to me is more of a linear timeline that we can access to gain information about the experience that we're having here in this timeline.
I love it. I think that's really helpful for people to be able to understand that. So you mentioned Joe Dispenza, right? You mentioned that you went through Spiral. Who else have you mentored or admired, maybe even in this space, that you feel like has been a part of your journey?
Yeah.
Let's give some shout outs to the people.
Certainly. Well, I think early on in my wealth consciousness journey, Amanda Francis was a huge influence for me. I, have a lot of respect for the work that she does. And while we are completely different in our approach and in the way we do things, she was a big influence on me early in my journey. And I'm really, really grateful for that. As well as Jen Sincero. I mean, You're a Badass at Making Money was a big influence early on for me. I'm a fan of Napoleon Hill and his books. That was quite influential for me in the beginning when it came to the wealth consciousness part of my journey. I haven't ever really been a person that's like, I look outward to political or public figures as mentors. Like my mentors really tend to be the people that are in my life that I'm really closely involved with. So obviously Dane Thomas, the founder of The Spiral, has been a huge influence on me. The Spiral changed my life. And as you know, I'm an advanced Spiral practitioner. So definitely, huge fan of Dane's. But, for me, the people that I choose to work with are often colleagues and peers. And we have reciprocal relationships. So, Alicia Baker, my cousin, who's an incredible, incredible human design expert. I work with her in my human design stuff. And then she's a client of mine in, the money stuff. And Maria Portis is another one who is such an incredible, clear, divine channel that I work with her personally, and she works with me, and then Michelle Patrick obviously is, just next level amazing in so many ways. Yeah. And, I mentor under her in 5 element theory, and we've created our modality together, as you know, because you are becoming a practitioner of that. And so, I feel like I'm the most inspired by the people who are around me. I learn so much from the people in my life, and I surround myself by people that I learn from. I mean, my husband is a constant source of inspiration for me, and how he thinks about things and how he sees things is really, really impactful in my life. Yeah. And I mean, I could go through, a million other friends and people that I'm close to, but, those are sort of the people that have big influence in my life right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anyone in like the mainstream business world that you would want to collaborate with if given the potential opportunity?
Oh, wow. People have been asking these questions lately because, as you know, I'm getting ready to do we've got a big PR push coming out in the next several months. I don't actually have an answer for that. And I guess what I would love from the listeners is I would love to know who you would like to see me collaborate with. Because I have had a hard time answering that question. I was actually asked that question for a publication that I'm going to be featured in. And I didn't have an answer. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I think part of why I don't know is there isn't actually anyone out there doing what I'm doing. I think the two people that sort of come to mind are Amanda Francis and Regan Hillier. But Amanda is very different than I am in that, she does money and mindset from a spiritual place, but from a more Christian place. Mm-hmm. And then I think Regan is similar to me in some ways as well. But, I'd say Regan's probably even a little more woo than I am. And so there aren't really a lot of people out there that are doing what I do. And so it's difficult to talk about collaborations. And I guess the other thing is I have an incredible, incredible collaboration with Michelle Patrick in our Immortal Alchemy programs. And that really is my focus in 2021. So maybe I can't think of anyone because I already have the perfect partner. I already have the perfect collaboration.
It's true. You've got products coming out. I mean, it's just going to be very, very exciting about that. So we all know you hate patchouli at this point. We've made it very, very clear. We know you love jasmine. What about food? Is there a food that you will not get within 10 feet of like, take it away? Like, I don't want to see that.
Durian.
Yes.
But if you're not out here in this part of the world, you probably don't know what durian is. So it's a fruit that grows in Indonesia. It is the fruit of Indonesia, and I have a rough go with it. What else? I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty easy. I don't like things like organ meats. I don't like durian. I don't like, is there anything else that I'm like, absolutely not? I don't like peas. So I really, really don't like peas. And it's not like the taste. They just give me anxiety for some reason. When I see peas, I get anxious.
Interesting. Okay. And what is something you would go to? Right? No peas at the home family dinner. So what is something you go to the ends of the earth for? Like, oh my gosh, I have to have this now.
Food wise?
Yeah.
Chips and salsa, for sure.
Okay. Now what type of salsa? This is the important stuff. Now I need to know, these are the important questions, right? Like what type of salsa are we talking?
So I love I love all kinds of salsa, honestly. The spicier, the better. So I can be over the moon for a good pico, but I also love an amazing, like blended salsa. Yeah. All spicy though. Super, super spicy.
Yep. As long as it's only occasionally, otherwise you're going to get in trouble with Mac. So
yes. No nightshades for me. So that's going to be that's my new treat. So
yes. If you could splurge on anything, right? Like, okay, your wealth consciousness, right? You're paying off your debt. You're being, responsible with your income. Your business is booming. It's growing, like exponentially. It feels like at this point, right? Like if there was one thing that you were going to splurge on, what would it be?
Well, I think once I get to the place where I feel like we've completed paying off the debt, we're in a place where we're managing whatever the investment's going to be for the expansion of the business this year. I really want a boat. So
a houseboat, like a speedboat, like a yacht, like a pontoon.
Well, not a yacht. I mean, I would love a yacht. Let's be honest. A speedboat. I really want to be able to be out in these waters in and around Bali, and really enjoy the ocean here and this island and this country, because it's just incredible and beautiful.
I love it. Well, Leah, as always, you know how much I love spending time with you, and I appreciate you. And I could continue asking you questions for the next 3 days straight, probably, but I just want to say thank you for letting me crash the party and letting all of us get to know you a little bit better.
Well, thank you. This was so fun. Hopefully this gave the listeners some more insight into who the Wealth Witch actually is. But thanks for tuning in. And thank you, Kari, for your amazing interview skills. And so until next time, this is The Wealth Witch signing off. And as always, remember that it is your divine birthright to be wealthy in all areas of your life. And you are so worthy and you are so deserving.
That's a wrap. Thank you for joining me. Remember, wealth is a mindset, and you absolutely deserve to live the life you deeply desire. And with belief and intention, you create your reality. Until next time, this is Leah Steele, the Wealth Witch.